Welcome to Today at Wayne, a podcast that engages and informs the Wayne State University campus community. With news, announcements, information, and current event discussions relevant to the university's goals and mission, Today at Wayne serves as the perfect forum for our campus to begin a conversation or keep one going. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the inaugural podcast for the Today at Wayne podcast, our inaugural episode. I'm your host, Daryl Dawsey. With this podcast, we'll be bringing you interviews with the administrators, faculty, staff, students, and community members who make Wayne State University the vibrant and engaging research institution that it is. And we look forward to having you join us on this journey. Our guest today is WSU PD Chief Anthony Holt, who, along with his work keeping the campus secure, has become one of the most forceful and vital voices in the country for police reform and the advancement of both community policing and de-escalation strategies. In fact, on his watch, Wayne State has become the national and regional headquarters for the National De-Escalation Training Center, whose central mission is to reduce conflict and avoid potential tragic scenarios for citizens and officers. And we're very excited to have him here. Welcome, Chief Holt.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Always good to talk with you. So let's just jump right into it. Just tell us a little bit about some of the great work that has been coming out of the National De-Escalation Training Center. I want to start right there because I had an entire summer last summer full of a lot of protests, a lot of outrage over some very tragic incidents involving folks like George Floyd and Mr. Blake there in Kenosha. And so, you and some other folks around the country have kind of, taken this issue by the horns, and I know it's a thorny issue. So I just want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about the De-Escalation Training Center and how that kind of fits in with your broader commitment to community policing and to de-escalation.
That's an excellent question. As you know, George Floyd was defining a moment in the country. It's going to be a defining moment in police work. When you hear all the protests and loud voices and they talk about defunding the police, and I'm looking at, as I said, we have to define the police. We have to define how we respond to the community, how we respond to conflict, and how we do this with a partnership. So I looked at all of this. And it was actually a year ago that this concept of de-escalation was brought to me. And I said, well, let me get an understanding what this is. There's all sorts of training out there, verbal judo, you let the person talk. You get all this 2-hour training, but how much substance was really to it? And then this system was brought to me at de-escalation. Then it goes by personality traits and issues where you have this training, and within really one day, you get this training where you could divide the type of issues that you're responding to into different personality traits. And it's very scientific and it's very patterned personality trait. You can see if the person has mental health issues. You can see if it's just a general aggravation. And you'll be able to look at this person, interact with this person that says, okay, this is the methodology that I need to use to de-escalate this situation here. Do we back off, come back later? Do we approach this person in a different manner? And we have 4 categories which we can define the type of encounter that we're walking into. And these 4 categories have subcategories, which gives us an understanding of this person and what type of methodology we need to use to de-escalate. The whole idea is to really avoid a use of force continuum.
Okay.
That's what we don't want to do. We could look at this person's personality. It may be 4 officers that respond. We may say, let's back up. Only one person needs to talk right now to this person here. And it's really a 3-day training. The first 2 days are understanding and learning the concept of the person that you're going to encounter, what type of personality he is subtitled under, and what techniques you use under their personality conflict to de-escalate. And then after you go over this the first 2 days, The last day is scenario based, where we actually walking through a lot of different scenarios. We're putting the officer to test. We're going to have a Milo system where it's a 360 uh, video screen here. Most people use the Milo for shoot, don't shoot scenarios where you walk through a hallway. We're not doing that. We're doing this Milo for de escalation training, where we could build the scenarios into this, or we could stop it and say, no, this is what's going on. We're going to expose the person to all types of scenarios. And what is different about this is we're going to bring the community in on this.
How so?
We're going to bring them in to be part of the scenario base.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're going to see us and they're going to say, no, when the police interact with me, this is what they do. Say, okay. So we're going to put this in a training and we want their input. Does this make the encounter better or does it worse?
Wow. That's
We
pretty
have to be careful because a lot of community members to say the best account is for you not to come at all. We have to get really to the fact. Now, somebody called us. We have to respond to that. We want your help in showing us how to respond in the best way.
I got you.
So we're going to be the headquarters. And from this headquarters, we're going to have regional training centers. Because somebody at the West Coast is not going to come here for the training. It's too expensive for them to travel. So we're going to have regional centers set up, Florida, North Carolina, Texas, Las Vegas. And we're going to be the headquarters here, but the methods and the standards are going to be the same.
Now, who are some of the agencies? What are some of the agencies so far that have been a part of this? Maybe that have taken some trainings or that have helped?
Well, right now, North Carolina is going to sign up. Florida is, Texas is, and we're working on Las Vegas right now. This would have been fully operational, but then we had the pandemic, the COVID-19. We have to follow that protocol.
Absolutely.
It's not an online training where you sit in the classroom and, you're taking this online, you could take a break, come back in 2 hours. This is not that type of training. This is intense, hands-on training. And with the COVID-19 protocol, we couldn't continue that type of training. So, for example, in my department, I have to have the officers trained. The other half haven't been trained because of the COVID. We stopped in February, and we're going to start up again in September. I have already had inquiries from Southfield Police, Wayne County Community College Police. Police agencies is a little different because they get so many people bombarding them with training. And some of the training is for the vendors to make money. And they want to see this work. They want to see if it's effective. And this is what we're going to bring to it.
Well, the stakes are high. We certainly know that, we certainly do need an improvement in terms of relations between, the community, particularly the African American community all over the country, certainly not just here in Detroit. So it's wonderful that you're doing that. And this seems to fit in with just an overall pattern that you've sort of exhibited in terms of your desire to try and improve just, generally speaking, police community relations. You've been also a big proponent of community policing. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, your vision for community policing. What does it mean to you? And how have you been able to help kind of implement that with the definition?
Well, see, I think the key is it has to be more than a sound bite. It has to be more where the police put community policing on their vehicles with a website where to contact them. Everything has to be driven from the top. If it's not driven from the top, it's not going to work. That means that in my department, I have to drive it. If the university is involved, the president has to be in line to drive it. The board of governors have to be in line. But once it's driven from the top, the key element, the only way it works, if you get buy-in from the community. Officers have to buy in, and because it's driven from the top, they sort of have to buy in if they want to continue doing the job here. The community buy-in has to be a little different because they've seen a lot of programs. They see them come and go, and they haven't seen much difference. The idea of some of the programs that we do, I would say 80% of the patrols And the people we affect or the calls that we make are outside the campus area. Let's take the Woodbridge Estates or the Woodbridge community, the old Jeffrey Projects, the old area where the Young Boys Incorporated had the headquarters. We are entrenched in that community. So you can't do it just by offering police services, by saying, we're going to get the bad guys. You call us, we come. If we see people hanging out, we're going to stop you. Has to be a different approach. So we looked at this pandemic as a perfect opportunity to do this approach. We found out there's a great deal of seniors there who nobody knows they're there. They don't come out. Their neighbors don't know who they are. They don't have relatives. They're by themselves. We had a call one day that this lady says, well, usually I see my neighbor when she comes out and she gets the mail, but the mail is piling up. I haven't seen her yet. Usually we get those kind of calls. It's the call from the worst. We knocked on the door. We heard a voice saying, I need some help. I can't move. She laid on the floor for 3 days. We forced the entry. She said, I don't have anybody. I don't have any relatives. I don't know anybody. And that's for one of our officers. I would have to give one of our officers, give him credit for starting this program. He says, you know what? We got a list of people. Nobody know who they are. They don't know anybody. So we did 3 days a week wellness check. We get a list of the seniors in this area. We go there and we knock on the door. Don't have to let us in. We just want to hear your voice. Are you okay? If there's anything that you need. And I can't tell you how appreciative that was. We started with about 15 and went to 25. Now we're expanding it even greater. So once we got into this, we said, let's take it a step further. We got a local church that puts together food baskets. So every Friday, we deliver meals to the seniors. And we're going to expand this even further because some seniors don't like direct deposits. They don't trust them. They want to go to the bank. But they say, well, I'm a little fearful of going to the bank. So, okay, we're going to be out there and do a community watch while you walk to the bank. Another thing that we discovered in the community was that we have a lot of youths and we need to connect with them. So we get a lot of bikes. We get a lot of bikes that we confiscate, they're stolen. We get a lot of bikes that are abandoned. So we bring them to the station. Our community bike officers repair them and we give them out to the community. That's another system that we did. What I consider a very important one that we do is that we have a watch, a safe watch program. If you live at the Woodbridge, you live on campus, you live in the medical center area, and you get home and you get off work at 2 or 3 in the morning, or you're going out at 2 or 3 in the morning. If you're coming back from the casino at 1 o'clock, you call us and says, I'm a block from my neighborhood. We'll be there. We're going to watch you go to your house. It has been very successful. It affected the crime rate because we saw an immediate decrease in robbery and carjackings.
Well, you're out ahead of it before anybody's got an opportunity to take advantage.
To think about the Woodbridge community, the old Jeffrey Projects, that holds an appreciation day for the officers at Wayne State, have a barbecue and hot dogs. The officers are out there interacting with them. That's a big switch.
Yeah, no, that's a huge switch, and I know as a member of this community that it has had impact. You are widely respected, even among folks who traditionally have had to have an oppositional stance against the police. Many of the anti-police brutality groups in the city know you, speak highly of you. I've heard some folks say, "Well, I'd rather have him as the chief of police in the city of Detroit." I'd like to ask you, and we need to keep you out at Wayne State as long as we can. But I want to ask you this: people talk about police culture being a very difficult kind of nut to crack, especially when you start talking about these strategies that seem very non-traditional in a lot of ways. How has the department taken to your promotion and advocacy of de-escalation training of community policing?
Well, police is a very fraternal organization. police officers, they socialize. It's a negative sort of socialization. That's just how it is. Most people won't really present that. I know what I started, uh, that's in the 70s, we're coming out the early 60s. It's a very negative approach, but law enforcement at that time really thought about the community, you know. So you have to be careful you don't get twisted by people in the department who have that sort of twisted negative attitude. So that's why when I said earlier, it has to be driven from the top. We have body cams. So we just don't put a body cam on an officer, then we get a complaint group. We say, oh, let's bring up the body cam. We're reviewing this on a daily basis. We see things that the citizens don't make a complaint about, and we'll call the officer in and we'll review this. We'll know, why was he handcuffed that soon? Why do you handcuff him and set him on the curb? We're talking about the approach. Why are you approaching the car with your hand on your weapons right away? So we're going over this. We want to catch it before the complaint comes in. Since George Floyd, the complaints come in all the time. But you have to respond to it.
Absolutely, no question. Now, one other thing, now, like I said, you're very widely respected, but you do have your critics, and there have been folks who have been critical of WSUPD because of its role in CompStat. I've sat in on meetings, with you, heard some complaints from student groups, other folks in the community who feared that, the CompStat figures are being used to somehow engage in discriminatory policing, or that these numbers are being used to sort of, predict crime and therefore sort of get people in trouble before they even get in trouble. I'd like to give you an opportunity to explain our relationship to CompStat and how it's actually.
To me, CompStat is probably one of the most effective principles that I put in here. Before CompStat, basically we had a briefing and we said we had a robbery here, we have a robbery there, well, we have a black male with a black hoodie, a dark clothing. Well, that fits me and everybody else. That's not specific. Does that mean you go out and you stop every black male that has a hoodie on and wearing dark clothing? No. So now we get CompStat. We bring that in as data driven. So the officers have a purpose to go out. When I mentioned what we did in Woodbridge, in a 2 weeks period, at one time, we had 6 carjackings. As people were coming to their house, a car pull up, rob them, or carjack them. So it's not just me in CompStat. My CompStat is a little different because what I started, the community sits in on the CompStat. And we get specifics. I specifically know what crime happened the last 2 weeks, what happened last year at this time. And from there, we could predict. We get a pattern. We have to have a pattern we go by. Right now, let's say airbags and it's one of the highest things at catalytic converters. So probably the highest larceny content going around. We get Pacific cars that they're doing this with. We narrow it down to a time that it's happening. So we have everybody around the table. When I started off with CompStat, it was just 6 officers here in my department. Now I have every law enforcement agency in this area, federal or local, Detroit Police, Wayne County Sheriffs, the federals. And what's more important, I have the community here. Who better to tell you what's going on in the community? Now, you can look at stats any way you want to look at them. You can make them look good, you can make them look bad. But if you have the community, you don't have to have anyone in the community tell you if they're safe. I cringe when I see stats that it says you're living in the safest area you are living in right now. And the community and say they couldn't be talking about where I'm living because this is what happened last week. See, a lot of crime is underreported. If the community feels that, well, if I report the crime, they're going to say, well, it's already happened. Officer's not coming. I'll call this number to take the report on the phone. Then they'll say, if I report it to the insurance company, my insurance is going to be canceled. And if I report it, they're not going to catch anybody. So a lot of crime goes unreported. With the younger groups in the neighborhoods, they'll say, no, I'll take care of it myself. So CompStat, we bring them to the meeting. When we say we're looking for this description, they'll say, no, this is this guy. This is where he lives. I had offers during CompStat from the community. They said, why don't you come in my house and use my house to look out the window? I, I started that, but that's not effective because it gets so involved with the officers, he's eating dinner in the house instead of doing his job there. When you get that kind of buy-in, it's going to be very effective.
Now, one other thing I want to ask you, and I know we're getting late, I don't want to keep you too long, but one thing I did want to ask you too is about sort of what you're anticipating for campus come fall. We've seen like the past year, the campus has been largely closed, but a lot of the students in the city have been involved in various movements. We've seen groups like Detroit Can Breathe. We've got students who are involved in that, students who are involved in some of the other movements around the city and around the region. And some of this has involved unrest and some clash with police officers. I'm just kind of curious, as the fall is kind of coming back, Wayne State is going to be reopening fully again. What are you anticipating in terms of the level of social passion, social unrest that we've seen in Detroit and around the country? And how are you thinking about how you'll handle that?
Well, it's going to be ongoing. This is not a cycle where they protest for a month, they took a break during the winter, and now it's over. No, this is for here. This is a defining moment for enforcement. I was a student in Wayne in the 60s, in the late 60s. I was the era of the Vietnam protests, the Black Power protests, the Black Panthers were in full operation. I grew up in that era. When the Black Student Association took over HNJ, that move was probably responsible for my first promotion here. So protest is a daily life of campus life there. For example, the Black Student Union hosted a protest several weeks ago, a rally. We monitor the rally. We monitor to see who they are and taking notes. No, we're monitoring the rally for safety of the students, also that they're not disrupting the university. But when they decide, well, we're going to march down Warren Avenue, down Woodward to the African American Museum, we know the climate. And we know that other cars, we don't want anyone to be a Charlotte where someone's going to ride into the crowd. So we're blocking traffic. We're in front of the rally. We're behind the rally. I don't think we're getting the message out good enough why we're there, but it's not to monitor them, but to make sure that these rallies could go on peacefully.
And that's frankly in keeping with your very long history there. I know I was a student as well, and I remember when you were an officer there, and I can certainly say from a first person perspective that you were always respectful, always acknowledging of the struggles that the students were engaged in, and always supportive in every way that you could reasonably be expected to be. And I think that that's one of the great things that is carried over in terms of your tenure as the police chief here. That attitude, I think, has been very helpful in terms of easing, some of the tensions that might otherwise have flared up and existed. Chief Holt, I'm going to wrap up now, but I want to say thank you. I really appreciate you taking your time. This is a great inaugural podcast, and you're a great first guest to have. Is there anything else that maybe you wanted to add that we did not get an opportunity to talk about?
I just want to say we have a very transparent process here. For those who want to make a complaint, they see something they don't like, you don't have to come in the station and fill out paperwork. We have a website. You can make a citizen complaint on the website. You can make a comment, and we're very transparent. And we depend on that kind of input. At times, we think we're doing everything right. But once we get a review what people are saying, maybe we're not doing everything right. But the only way we're going to know if we have an open line of communication.
Well, I think that's one of the things that sets you apart from a lot of your contemporaries, and that is a willingness to try and see what you're doing wrong and to get that right. Chief Holt, I want to say thank you again. I really appreciate you taking your time and joining us here on the Today at Wayne podcast. I am Daryl Dawsey. This has been the Today at Wayne podcast, and we hope to see you again real soon. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Today at Wayne. We'd love to hear from you, our campus community, about other podcast ideas and topics. What compelling things are you doing to spread the good word about living, learning, working, and playing like a warrior? Let us know by visiting today@wayne.edu.